today we're going to start the database and data modelling unit. Last lesson you would have looked into relational databases as a reminder from what you did from ICT GCSE. Now, the limitations of a file-based approach is what we're going to look into today. So you're going to understand the limitations of file-based approach for storage and retrieval of data. Right, so now firstly, you probably want to know what a file-based approach is. So a file-based approach is when the database or the data model, so this could be, for example, a spreadsheet or a text file, has all the data saved on it. So this could be people's personal details, and a file is saved on a disk such as the local drive or a network. Now, the good thing about that is basically anybody can access it. It can be emailed to people so they can look up the data. It can be put on a shared network and people can just open it and see it. They don't need to know how to use anything because all the data is right there in front of them. So that's the benefit of using that. Programs that maybe, that save data in this way, for example, could be Microsoft Access. Now, obviously, Microsoft Access will take some training to use, but the database is saved on a disk. Okay, so it will be saved on a hard drive or it will be saved on a network drive. But it's not necessarily the same as saving the data on a text file or a spreadsheet. It is a bit more professional than that. So, well, if you're thinking, well, you need to save the data, how else would you do this? Well, there are various programs. Okay, so we know about the client-server model, you've used it. So, for example, when you saved information onto the server, when you was using PHP, for example, it could be retrieved on a client computer in a different way. So, for example, you may have a subscription to something like Fortnite. You've got logins, you've got passwords, but they can't be looked up. So if you lost your login or your password, you have to ask for them to retrieve it. Okay, so although it's your data, you can't just go and look it up. Now, these commands will deliver the data or execute the command, for example. They effectively hide the files from the user and just show them what they need to see. So examples of this could be, for example, like Oracle, SQL Server by Microsoft, and IBM Database 2. Okay, so they're examples of databases that you could look up. So, for example, if you wanted to take a look at or watch videos on YouTube to find out more, obviously do so. So here's a scenario that we're going to look into. Okay, because we're going to look into, why is there a problem with file-based databases. So now a theatrical agency makes bookings for bands, and they have they have not many. So what they do on their books, they basically decide to set up a database because previously they haven't had so many, but now they do. So now they're getting more and more bands, where before they might have dealt with maybe a couple of bands, but now they've got too many to remember. So what they want to do is that they want to keep a database of all these bands with their contact details, names, that sort of thing. So they decide to store them on a text file and store the individual data for each band member. So someone thought it might be a good idea to set up a text file, put the names, the bands and details and so on, so all the information's there. So the fields they use are name, contact details, banking details, band name, band agent name. Okay? So, and the band agent's contact details. So they would get in touch with them, say, via an agency. Now, what they did was the purpose of the file is so that the agency can contact the band members if a booking arises. So, for example, somebody phones up and says, I've got an event. I would like a band to play at this event. This is the kind of music that I want. Are you able to find somebody to do this for me? So then the whole point is that a band might say, yes, the agency will have to say, yes, I've someone perfect for you. and they can get in touch with them. So the file can be used to pay the band members as well, because obviously they're going to need payment. And here's an example of the file. So as you can see, they've got the name, they've got the band that they're in. This is the sort code and account number for their bank so they can be paid. And this is their phone number. Okay, so each one of these rows is a record. Now, can you see a problem with that? So hopefully you're thinking what the problems are right now. So you're thinking, well, there's just a text file. There's no password on it. Anybody within that company can see that person's account number and can see their phone number. So anybody's got like, and the biggest concern obviously is the account details. So now potentially, if we think about it as well, so we're not just looking at the privacy concerns here as well as the data integrity. Potentially, a database could have thousands more lines of data. So would you want to look through thousands of lines of data to find the line that you want? And also, how do you know, I mean, this is a small database, so you would know, but how do you know if there was hundreds more lines of data if you've input someone's details in twice? What about if someone's changed their phone number? What about if someone's changed their bank? So maybe they're not happy with the bank that they're with and they've changed banks. Or maybe their account has been frauded, so they've had to change their account. So now, obviously, the data can be entered in a wrong order. So this is the problem. So if we look at this file here, there's no sorting, there's nothing. I mean, how do you know that is, whether that's going to be someone like here, for example, John Carlos? How do you know about whether that's his surname or his first name? How do you know this is the band? Look, we see this has gone over here and the band is here. So how do we know? How do we know what the difference between their account number and phone number? So the data obviously can be duplicated very easily. Now, we know from using Access that you can include a primary key where you can give somebody, say, a unique identifier like a membership number. So then it can't be duplicated. Obviously, the data can be entered in correctly. Now, we know from our experience with using Microsoft Access that we can set up a validation, okay? So like, for example, with the account numbers, the bank account numbers, you can actually set a validation up to say, no, it has to be this number of digits, and the same with the phone number. Obviously, data can be very easily deleted, okay? There's nothing to stop you from deleting that whole file. And obviously the data can be easily sabotaged. There's no password on it, there's nothing to stop you. Where with Access, it's difficult to delete data. Now, the next problem we've got is the problem with the privacy of the data. So it seems that all staff can access all areas of data. So for example, the recruitment department can see the banking details. Do they need to see somebody's banking details? Probably not, no. If a database system was put in place, then maybe the data privacy can be put into place. So for example, there could be different levels of privacy. So like, for example, as you know, I'm a teacher, I work in a school. I can go onto the school system and I can see information about students, but then there's parts of information that I can't see because I don't need to see it. Okay, I don't need to see, for example, how a parent will pay for their child's school dinners, like, their account numbers, their address. I don't need to see things like that. So here's a way that we could split up the information. So this is the department, for example, here. So we've got the contact department, the finance department, the publicity department, and the recruitment department. So these are the different levels that they've got. So for example, the only department that will need somebody to see somebody's bank details is the finance department. Okay, because they're the ones that are in charge of paying people. But they don't need to see the agent's details or the band names. All they need to know is the person's name, their bank details, and the details of the event, because they've got to see who they're paying and what for. Okay, because no finance department is going to pay for something when they don't know what they're paying for. That's not going to happen. So here's an example. So this is the finance department. So they've got the member's name, they've got their bank details, and they've got the event details. So this band member, Daniela Herbert, has invoiced Theatrical Recruitment to pay her for an event that she's done. So, or 2 events. So here's the invoice date. Okay, so she completed this event on the 17th of January, and she would like to receive payment within 5 days. Okay, so she doesn't get the payment within 5 days. She wants to know why. And the payment to the Cambridge Bank. This is the sort code and the account number. So the finance department need that because they need to put that money into Daniela's account. So Daniela said she's performed at the Surrey exhibition event. She would like a payment of £250. Then she did a 2-hour private party event of £120. So they need this detail here so they can pay that amount of money into her account. It's as simple as that. Now, data redundancy. Okay, now not all data is useful, okay, particularly when it's being duplicated. Okay, so when data is stored more than once, this is simply a duplication of data. Now, this doesn't mean that the data is no longer of any use, but once it's stored, it doesn't need to be stored again. Okay, so for example, we don't need Daniela Herbert's details twice. We've got her details once, that's all we need. Now, for a start, it will take up space and it can cause confusion. Okay, so data may be edited, so a person may move house, so they've changed address. Maybe their bank details are changed. Maybe Daniela doesn't work for the Way Out band anymore, she works for another band. So when you've got this data stored more than once, like for example, you've got one file with her details and another file with her details, then another file, it gets confusing. So it can lead to a lack of data integrity. So for example, if Daniela doesn't work for the Way Out band anymore and she's changed to another band, then obviously there's no data integrity there because it's not true. She's changed it. Or you've got one file that says one thing and 2 files that may say another. So that leads to confusion. Now, moving on to data dependency. So when databases are designed for, say, a specific purpose or a company, the programmer would consider to define the data files for the program that they would need. So what sort of data files do they need? Okay, each department would have its own program to process information. So for example, appointments. So maybe the recruitment have got an appointment system. Finance would have a system where they create the invoices, process the invoices, and pay the money into the bank account. So they've got a completely different software. The publicity department that would make, say, flyers and posters and put information onto their website, they will have a completely different program to use. So when a programmer creates a program for the department, they know these files might have to be read and organised, and basically they need to be taken, say, for example, the 4th item on a line of the file needs to come out. So they need to make sure this program is versatile and flexible. Okay, so this is an example of data dependency, because the whole corporate structure is dependent on that data, and they're dependent that that data is correct, and that's how they work with it. So as I said, recruitment need to make appointments. Now they don't want to go into one piece of software, write everything down, or print everything up and then put it into another system. They need to be able to just take that information and use it. So now, obviously, things within a company happens. Some companies basically get bigger. Some companies may get smaller. Some companies may have to completely renew their ICT systems, okay, because they're now out of date, they're failing. So they've got a new internet connection, new computers, new network structure, or maybe they've upgraded a new operating system, so therefore they've upgraded their office system or their software and so on. So we need to make sure that these files not only can be used by one department, okay, because obviously the data has to be used by, one central data system may have to be accessed by, lots of different departments at the same time. But the issues with the agencies is that they may have to change their data. So, for example, if they do have a new system put in place, will they have to put all that data in all over again? Okay, so files may need to be rewritten, and this could lead to further complications. So the programmer will need to make sure that the program is adaptable enough to cope with a new file structure. Because companies change, they change their way their system works, they change their file structures, and they've got to basically make sure that this is adaptable in the software. Right, so what you're going to do now is you're going to complete this worksheet. Okay, you're going to have to download this onto Word because it doesn't work very well on Google Docs, okay, because it was written on Word in the first place. So what we're going to look at is what is the file-based approach and what are the problems with it? What is data redundancy? What are the privacy concerns with a file-based approach? If an organisation saves data on a text file, what are the limitations? And what is data dependency and what are the concerns? Now, obviously, you can do this by just entering text boxes in and then you can type over them. And if you want to know, more, if you want to use the textbook, it is chapter 10 of the Cambridge Computer Science textbook. Okay, very best of luck.